Hello. Say hiya, Patty. Welcome to, or welcome back to my channel. I'm Johanna, me, my dog and books. This is Patty and Lucy is, oh, wriggle, wriggle, wriggle. And Lucy is currently in her own bed, I think, snoozing. So, sorry, welcome if you're a first time watcher, and thank you for coming back if you've watched more than once. I was having a think about today's video, and I wasn't, well, I had an idea of what I was going to do. I was actually going to do books for you to pick for my August TBR, but I'll park that till next week, because what I wanted to talk to you about was the New York Times 100 best books of the 21st century. So this was a post, was a feature that they shared in the last day or so, so you may have already seen it on like Instagram or TikTok, etc. And I thought, do you know what, let's have a little chat about the 100 books that are on that list, the ones that I've read from that list, if any. I have read some, otherwise this will be a super short video, and my thoughts and feelings about said lists. Also, please note, oh, my hair is a mess. Please note, these are all my own opinions. I don't judge you if you've read all 100 books of the top of what the New York Times says is the top 100 books of the 21st century, or like most of them, and it's all okay if you disagree with my thoughts and feelings about all of this. Let's just all be kind and lovely. So I'll put the link below in the description for the full list. So of what the New York Times said were the best books, the best top 100 books of the 21st century. I should have realised what they based, I mean, it's New York Times book review, so maybe it was just their own opinion. But I went through it the other day and discovered I've read 18. Quick math tells me that's 18% of the books listed. I've got a list of them here. And there was actually only maybe 2 that I kind of wanted to read, you know, like I would add to my TBR. Their number 1, I completely disagree with, but you can also completely disagree with me. So what I thought I'd do is I'll go through them, give you my thoughts, and then I'll tell you the ones that I actually really enjoyed and would recommend reading, which is not all 18 of them. I also have my trusty laptop with me so that I can check, because some of these I read forever ago, like a good while ago. I can't even tell you. I'll be able to tell you on my Goodreads when I come up against them. Anyway, for the first one of the list, now I can't remember, well, I've written them in order, right, of when I was going through from 100 to number 1, so this will give you a guide to where they roughly appeared in the list, but I stupidly didn't write down what number they were at, so appalls. But the first one that I have read from the list was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. So Station 11 is, it's a very unusual dystopian tale, post-apocalyptic, first published in 2014, and I read it in 2015 apparently. It's nearly 20 years ago. No, nearly 10 years ago, I can't do math. I really enjoyed. I love dystopian, post-apocalyptic sort of stories. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is one I would definitely recommend. I've still never watched the TV adaptation, but hear very good things. And I have since read a few of her other books and not loved them quite as much as Station 11. Oh no, wait a minute. There was a movie. I've definitely seen a movie about Station 11. I definitely saw that. It must have come out a few years after. Anyway, it also won the Goodreads Reader Choice Award nominee for Best Fiction in 2014. Oh yeah, so it must have won the award for Best Fiction in 2014. So that was the first from the list, which I do actually highly recommend you read if you like dystopian, apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic sort of sci-fi vibes. The next one was An American Marriage by Tayari Jones and was published in 2018. So this is a really interesting story where you follow two newlyweds who the husband in this particular relationship is arrested and sent to prison for 12 years, I think it is, for a crime that his wife Celestial knows he didn't commit. And so that is the kind of premise. That's all you need to know. I read it in 2020 and I gave it 4 stars. Thought it was really well written. It deals with a lot of very topical issues around institute of marriage. It deals with very heavy topics, but is beautifully written. I highly recommend it. I think it was maybe Barack Obama, you know, like Barack Obama comes out with these top reads and stuff. I think this featured in one of them as well. So that there is definitely one I recommend. The next is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Okay, so loads of people love this book. I am in the minority in that I didn't. So please don't take my... So based on general sort of most people's thoughts and feelings about it, this is probably definitely one you should check out from the list. It also won the Goodreader's Choice Awards for Best Fiction in 2022. This is just coming in to say hello, if you can hear all the clippy clops and sniffing. This is a story about human connection and creativity and platonic love. And these two people that meet in hospital, and then they go like beyond that, go into the world of video game production. So I'm not into video games, and to be fair, I don't think you need to be into video games to read this book in the slightest. Probably if you are into video games, it has another dimension to it. But I went in when this book was really at the top of its hype in Instagram and book talk, and I was like waiting for amazing things, and I didn't feel it. I was in awe of the concept, but for me the execution just didn't deliver for my expectations. Tackles race and cultural identity, which is really important, which I liked in the story. There is disability rep, but it kind of was touched on in the earlier book, and then it kind of didn't really get picked up beyond that. So, but there is some good diversity rep in the book overall. So that sounds up your street, check it out. I was underwhelmed, and that might be more to do with the hype than anything else. The next is Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. This one came out in 2008. It appears I read it in 2020 from a book group. I have to say I really enjoy Elizabeth Strout's writing, and this I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So you have Olive Kitteridge is the main character. She's a retired school teacher, and she's very grumpy and deplores the change in her small town, Crosby I think it is, in Maine. She basically doesn't like a lot about the world generally, and you kind of watch Olive as she deals with her older adult child who, according to the synopsis, feels tyrannised by her irrational sensitivities. And then there's her husband, who you watch their relationship as I think he feels a bit mix of a blessed and cursed in his relationship with Olive. I adored reading this. It was lovely to see. I don't think I've watched the movie adaptation. Frances McDormand plays Olive Kitteridge in the adaptation. I can't remember. But it's supposed to be really, really good. I really enjoy Elizabeth Strout's writing. I really enjoyed that. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I recommend this as one. Whether I call any of these books so far, because none of them have been 5 stars, so far they're maybe not books I would necessarily have picked out as the top 100 of the 21st century, but that is my own personal opinion. In saying that, I think I gave this one, I gave like 4.5 stars, and it is The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. So this is a non-fiction book that looks at basically how mass incarceration in America is being used as effectively the equivalent of Jim Crow. Michelle Alexander, who writes it, is like a former litigator turned legal scholar. So their approach to this book is thoroughly well researched, hugely powerful, and it's a very anger-inducing book, as you can imagine. And they do an amazing job of like forcing the reader to really think about pushing mass incarceration and the whole purpose and the system around mass incarceration in America to the forefront of the civil rights movement. Absolutely phenomenal. I'd highly recommend it in audio if you can get it. And it really makes you question what really has changed in respect of civil rights and racial justice. So yeah, highly recommend. So yes, that is one that I'm like, definitely that should be up there with some of the best books of the 21st century. The next one was We the Animals by Justine Torres. I'm actually not sure why this was picked out. I gave it, well, firstly, it was published in 2011 and it's only 128 pages, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And apparently, according to when I read it in 2017, I found it really uncomfortable reading. Now, often I can find things really uncomfortable reading and still rate it quite highly. So I don't know if that's past me's way, but I did say it was a fantastically written book, but the level of darkness and uncomfortableness I felt reading it made it a 3 star instead of 4. That in itself, I did make comments about. That says a lot about the writer and the writer's capabilities. One that I think you're kind of best to go in a little bit blind. Certainly one I would say is about boyhood in a very uncomfortably dark way. How many times can I say uncomfortably dark? So the next one was Life After Life by Atkinson. So this came out in 2013. I read it in 2015. I was like, how is that possible? But it came out in 2013. I read it in 2015. I gave it 3 stars out of 5. And it was one of the books. Notice there's quite a few books in this that I've read because of book group. I read it for book group, but I recall struggling to get into it. And I think, as with some of my books that I read for book group, I tend to be fair, I tend to finish them so I can have a good debate about it. But had I not been reading this for book group, pretty much my notes say that I would have DNF'd it a third in. God, I didn't really hold back on my review. When I'm looking at it, it says it's overhyped and overrated and too long. Clearly I wasn't a fan, but many people are. Again, I think I'm in the minority. But I tied it up with I appreciate the writing style but didn't love it. So that was my thoughts about Life After Life. What actually is about? Oh yeah, so it says, what if you could live life again and again until you got it right? So that's what it's about. Spookily enough, the next one is also one that I read recently from book group, but it's not a recent book. I take that back, it is. It's from 2022. Trust by Hernan Diaz. From an award-winning chronicler of our nation's history and its legends comes his much anticipated novel about wealth, talent, trust, intimacy, truth and perception. So it came out in 2022 and I didn't bother rating it, but I do recall giving it a 3. Well, I didn't bother rating it at the time because sometimes I can delay my rating and I've obviously forgot to rate it. I actually read it not today. I must have read it last year then. If it came out in 2022, I must have read it last year for book group. Yes, I did. Enjoyed it, didn't love it. Interesting premise. That's all I can remember. Now, first, here's my first 5 star of all of the books that I've read from this list. Take it back. I thought it was, but it's a 4.5. So close. It's a very close one. At some point, I gave it 4.5 stars. Persepolis is a graphic novel following the life of an Iranian girl in Iran. It's actually a memoir and comic strip. Came out in 2007 and I read it in 2018. I've written, this is such a clever, haunting and funny memoir of Marjane's life growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution and the aftermath. So I do remember at the time when I was reading it, I didn't really have much knowledge of Iran and Iranian culture, so I found that really, really insightful. To be fair, probably what I did know was very westernised, so very stereotyped from a Western point of view. And I also have noted that I watched the movie after reading the book, which also is an animation based on the graphic novel. Phenomenal. So highly, highly recommend this book. What a wonderful way to do a memoir. The next that was on the list, and I don't know if it was the only one by Claire Keegan, but it was Small Things Like These, which I read. When did I read it? Well, it came out in 2021. And I read it in February. It's a small book. Well, how many pages is it? 128 pages. It's a small book that packs a punch. Set in a small Irish town in 1985. It's around about Christmas time, so I'd highly recommend as a winter read. And you've got Bill Furlong, who's a coal merchant, and early one morning he's delivering his coal to a local convent, and that's where he discovers what happens to young girls who are pregnant in the convent, and how the village in itself is complicit to this, these acts that happen. As you can imagine, don't want to say much more than that, other than beautifully written characters, beautifully set. I think I went in with so much hype around Claire Keegan, and it's not to say I didn't like the writing style, but it was a solid 3 out of 5. 3 is a good read for me. What I am excited for is the movie adaptation, which has Cillian Murphy in it, so I'll be watching that. The next is Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. Came out in 2017, and I read it in 2018, it appears. Have I rated it? No, can I remember what? Oh dear. So this is Jesmyn Ward's first novel. Grapples with the ugly truths at the heart of the American story and the power and limitations of the bond of family. I think this also was one that was maybe on Barack Obama's list. Certainly there's quite a few books by Jesmyn Ward on this list, which tells me a lot about said author. I didn't rate this, probably because I forgot, and now I actually have no idea what I thought about it, which makes me think I didn't utterly dislike it, so I'd maybe check it out. So this is Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Apologise if I've totally messed up that pronunciation. Came out in 2013. And I read it in 2017, and I've pretty much given it 4 out of 5 stars and said an epic read, beautifully written, a complete eye-opener into race. Americanah is a really interesting story about 2 main characters who are in love that flee or leave Nigeria for the West. Femulu moves to America, where she actually has to grapple with what it means to be black for the first time, because coming from Nigeria, it's not something she really had to think about. And her love of the time, Obindi, had hoped to join her, but it's post 9/11, and so trying to immigrate into the country is very difficult, so he ends up living a bit underground in London. And sort of 15 years later they reunite in a kind of newly democratic Nigeria. So that's a kind of bit of a synopsis of it. Utterly, I mean, Adichie's writing is phenomenal, and I really enjoyed it. Another strong 4 out of 5 stars. And I think I read that one for book group too, because this one I also definitely read for book group. And that's Atonement by Ian McEwan. That was first written in 2001. And I read it for book group. I can't even remember when, because I've not marked it in my Goodreads. This might mean before I was actually on Goodreads, to be honest, that I read this. It's a novel about love, war, childhood, class, guilt, forgiveness, and set in 1935 in England. And to be fair, I just remember, I mean, if you've seen the film, there is jaw-dropping plot twists in this story. I don't really want to say any more than that, other than, is it Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, the Scottish actor that's in the film, which is a very good adaptation, but I highly recommend going into the book beforehand. That's all I'm going to say. What did I rate it? I don't know, but probably a 4, because it's a... and Ian McEwan is a favoured author within our book group. And again, honestly, I think all of these that I've read, not all, but majority of the ones I've read here, I've read because of book group. This one is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. This won the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Historical Fiction in 2017. It was written in 2017, and I read it in 2018. Now if I was to go and make a guess at what I thought about this, it would probably be 2 or 3 stars, but in actual fact, Past Me rated it 4 stars. It says, and I quote my own review, "It's the sheer concept style of this book that has me in awe. What a wholly original idea and execution. I have to admit, I get lost in parts, but overall this is an impressive read. Historical fiction, unfolding in a graveyard over the course of a single night, narrated by a dazzling, I don't even know. Oh, we're in 1862, the Civil War is underway, and meanwhile President Lincoln's 11-year-old son is very unwell. Stuff happens. I'm not going to say any more. Anyway, that was, to be honest, I think the less you know about some of these books going in, the better. I kind of say that about most books. The next is The Sellout by, is it Paul Beatty? Let me triple check that for you. Did I read this for book group? Possibly. Yes, it was The Sellout by Paul Beatty. Biting satire about a young man's isolated upbringing and the race trials that sent him to the Supreme Court. It's supposed to be satirical. I don't know if it's, well, it's contemporary. It was supposed to be satirical. I gave it 2, possibly 2.5 stars out of 5. Although I said it was an important book about race in America today. And a lot of what the author writes about I found jaw-dropping. I appear to have found the writing style both fascinating and utterly irritating. And again, I've blamed myself that maybe I'm just not intelligent enough to fully have comprehended the satire and the humour in the book. I'm actually starting to wonder if any of these books are 5 stars. I mean, 4 and 4.5 stars are good ratings, but I'm a bit dubious now. No, this one's a 4-star, which is good, but I'm just surprised. Am I though? I mean, some may consider the New York Times top 100 21st century rather elitist, but I don't know. I can't confirm. I'm just maybe not smart enough. But this one I really did, and I would highly recommend. It's Pachenko by Marjane Lee. Came out in 2017 and I read it in 2021. It's a multi-generational saga set in Japan. Yes, set in Japan. I was just sense checking myself there. So somebody was at our door. Follows a Korean family in Japanese occupied Korea, which when I was reading it, I had no idea was a thing that happened. My bad. It just follows the generations of that family through the years, which do you know, Pachenko is great. Great read if you really like multi-generational East Asian stories. I would say for me a 5-star read in comparison to that is Wild Swans, which is set in China. Personal opinion. Oh, this one, right. So the last 2 came easily within the top 10, and the last one, the number 1 I will tell you about in a minute. But this one's The Road by Cormac McCarthy. A classic, yes. I don't always love classics though. Sci-fi, dystopian, post-apocalyptic. Written in 2006, and I read it in I must have read it pre-being on Goodreads because I've not even got it marked as read. There's obviously the movie adaptation around this. I'm not a massive reader of Cormac McCarthy. I know he's a well-respected, well-known author. I found the whole story utterly soul-destroying in a really sort of grim way, which I think it's supposed to be, but it just wasn't for me. Then, the number 1 book on the New York Times top 100 books of the 21st century was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So, I've got thoughts here, and feel free to disagree. It's hailed as a masterpiece. It's historical fiction set in Italy. It came out in 2011, and I read it in 2017, and I gave it 2 stars. So my review starts with, I genuinely struggled to stay engaged with this book, and I felt utterly bored. It's not to say I didn't appreciate the writing. and how descriptive it was of Naples and the Italian culture. Two sort of main characters that I did not twig with at all. I was bored. I think the only reason I finished it is because I read it for book group and didn't like it. I think because of the amount of love I gave it, that is around for this book, I gave it 2 stars. I think in reality, in hindsight, I'd probably give it 1 star. That's my personal opinion. I didn't gel with it. I do know a few people that DNF'd it. More people in my book group enjoyed it. But that there is the books that the New York Times, well, the 18 books that I've read from the New York Times list of the top 100 books of the 21st century. Now, of them, I would recommend Station 11, An American Marriage, All of Kitteridge, The New Jim Crow, Persepolis, Small Things Like These, Americanah, Atonement, Lincoln and the Bardo, and Pachenko. So those are the ones. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 out of the 18 that I've read. And there was only really 2. Actually, I don't know. Because I'm looking at my notes and I was like, there wasn't any that I said Men We Read by Jesmyn Ward was one that I'd written down as a maybe to read from the list. But apart from that, I saw nothing else. So, but to be fair, that was on a very quick skim, basing it very specifically on covers. Which is very judgy of me and I shouldn't do that, but I did. And that is me. So firstly, have a look at the list. I put the link in the description. Let me know how many out of the 100 that you've read. It's not a competition. But did you read more than 18? I mean, to be fair, I don't even know if that's good. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I only read 2 in all honesty. And is there any of the 18 that I've read that you've read? Is there any that I've talked about that you fancy reading? And is there any from the list that you actually think, based on what I like, if you've watched, well, watching this, but also watched any of my other videos, is there any in that list that you think I should definitely read and not ignore? Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Also, what's your thoughts on these kind of lists? Are they elitist? Are they a bit pretentious? Do you use them as a bit of a guide? All opinions valid. Just let me know in the comments. And until next time, thanks as always for watching. And if this is your first time you like this, please do subscribe. But thank you for every like and comment and view. Until next time, bye!